The NHS scandal exposed as elderly patients are treated like animals on overwhelmed hospital wards. I'm going to read into this more from The Independent, you guys. Let's go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is Regan Leet here with an article from The Independent with the headline that the NHS scandal exposed as elderly patients are treated like animals on overwhelmed hospital wards. Families of elderly people have come forward to share their harrowing allegations of neglect, as top doctors warn that these patients are suffering degrading care well below the standards of NHS experts, Rebecca Thomas reveals. Guys, while you're here, before I give my initial thoughts, you can hit the like button, share this across social media so others are notified of this video. So I've covered some various stories here on this channel for those who aren't aware of certain scandals within the NHS already. We've had one with regarding to the mental health within the NHS, the crisis of where that is overflown. We've had the crisis of some doctors and nurses who aren't even apparently qualified, as they've apparently come through Nigeria. We've also covered that. And now we have this one here when it comes to the elderly. Now we've heard of, I'm sure some of you may or may not have been aware, we've heard of stories about some of how the elderly have been treated by certain daycares, care homes, sorry, within England, and some of them have suffered from horrible neglect as well. But this, unfortunately, is another example of our NHS needing some kind of reform. Now, I understand. I know it's easy for us to sit here and say that yes, the NHS is entangled in lot with privatisation, and I know it's a big issue, and we need to untangle that, and we need to separate that. But let's make no mistake about it, and I'm glad that I don't see this argument from anybody yet in my channel since I've started, is that a lot of things are a result of the Conservatives in the last 14 years. There's absolutely no question about that, and there's no question that the underfunding and austerity over the last 14 years has contributed to the NHS struggling to cope with things. Even before the pandemic, even before the pandemic, and this is really important for people to remember, and even I remember, on the BBC or whatever, 6 o'clock in the evening, during Christmas time, like literally from 2014, 2015 onwards, they were always reporting around Christmas time about how the NHS is overwhelmed or it's struggling to cope when it came to the winter crisis all the time. And this was continuously happening continuously happening. Now we're at a point where every day is in crisis. Every day it's overwhelmed. Every day it cannot cope. It's so much that you don't hear enough about it in the news because it's not news anymore because it's a normal thing. And obviously, certain aspects of the media don't want you to know how bad the NHS is doing, or they want to distract you from other things. But coming all the way back round, our NHS does have to have some kind of reforms. And one of the arguments that Labour have proposed, whether you agree or disagree, is that they want to bring in privatisation to help with the backlogs. Now, I'm against privatisation having more hands within the NHS. I really am. I am for more new technologies and whatnot, but I'm just not. I just don't like this idea of putting more privatisation, more American healthcare companies into our NHS. I just feel like the term of free to the point of use is gonna die one day, and we're gonna be paying out of pocket for our healthcare. I just know it's coming down the road, and I feel like Labour are gonna stab us in the back with it. It definitely feels that way to me. I know some Labour people are like, oh no, they're just playing the cards and that, and I'm just like, hearing what Wes Streeting is saying is just not giving me any confidence whatsoever as him as health secretary in any way, shape or form. And now we look at this NHS scandal as elderly patients being treated like animals. So a couple of questions. So first of all, why are they being treated like animals? Who the hell is looking after them? And regardless of the facts, whatever the doctors and nurses are going through, and yes, let's make no bones about it, some of these doctors and nurses are working 40, 50, 60 plus hours a week, absolutely killing themselves, literally not getting barely of any sleep, if none, never going home, and and I want to put this out there, I absolutely commend any NHS doctors and nurses who are absolutely working around the clock to try and help as many people as they possibly can, and I really, really generally mean that. I really, really do. However, who is responsible for this potential scandal? Who is treating them like this? And if this is NHS workers, why are they still in this? Why are they still in their jobs? And why have they not been sacked? That's the things that really irritate me, because while I totally understand the stresses and aggravation that the NHS workers are under, I really, really do. We also have to remember that the elderly, like any other patients, you have to treat them with compassion. You have to try and help them. And yes, some people can be really nasty patients when they come in the hospitals. We know that. We know that there's always going to be people like that. But that term of care and service that you give really does matter to people, and the way you talk to people, the way you approach people, the way you engage with people, that kind of stuff really does matter. And this term of the elderly being treated like animals really does concern me, to say the least. Because we're having a lot of people in society being treated like animals as it is. The government are treating us like animals. Asylum seekers are being treated like animals. Our elderly are being treated like animals. We have rent arrears being treated like animals. It's really, really not a good time, right? So whatsoever, guys. So let's read into this. What this is all about. So distressed elderly patients are being treated like animals and left begging for care as NHS staff struggle to cope with the overwhelming wards and an ever-increasing ageing population, an investigation by The Independent can reveal. Scores of families have come forward to share the harrowing allegations of neglect, as one top doctor warned that elderly people are receiving care well below the standard they should expect, including long waits in waiting rooms and degrading corridor care. In one shocking case, a 90-year-old patient admitted to the hospital with a urinary tract infection, that's UTI, was allegedly left semi-naked in delirious in his hospital bed before choking on vomit after being sedated without his family's permission. His daughter told The Independent another patient, 99, was traumatized after being left in a bed next to the body of a dead woman. Oh my God. Oh my God. I hope they are not true. I really hope they're not true, guys. That's so humiliating. That's so degrading. Especially when you're at... I say especially at that time of your life, at that age of your life, like. But I'd say in any age of any aspect, really. But my God, that's just disgusting. How is this being allowed to happen, if it is? The investigation was sparked by the horrific story of 73-year-old Martin Wild, who was left so desperate for pain medication he was forced to call 999 from his hospital bed. What? It comes as analysis by this publication shows the government was warned 3 times last year by corridors over the increasing risks to elderly patients' lives amid fears they are not being effectively safeguarded. They were warned 3 times last year about this. 3 times they were told. Top generic medic Dr. Adam Gordon told The Independent that older patients are being allowed to deteriorate on a daily basis, warning there are stories of patients who have come to very real harm. The Independent also report that more than half, nearly 750,000 of the 1.5 million patients who awaited more than 12 hours to be seen in A&E last year were aged 70 or over. Almost 250,000 of the 1.4 million over 75s who were discharged from hospital in 2022-2023 were readmitted to hospital within 30 days. Latest statistics show an increasing number of patients, 2,033, suffered fractures from falls in hospitals last year. The latest figures show the number of patients developing hospital-acquired bed sores hit a 3% high in December 2023. Britain's most senior A&E doctor, Dr. Adrian Bowles, said the health service was providing undignified care for older people who are put at risk at harm while waiting in emergency departments. Do you know what really angers me? They were warned. They were warned about this. And you know what what's the most disgusting thing that comes to my mind thinking about all this? Was Boris Johnson and his phrase, "Let the bodies pile up high." That's what that's what comes to my mind. Let the bodies pile high. That's what I'm thinking. Because that's what I think the Conservatives would rather kill off people rather than help them. And like, I know we have an aging population, but everybody needs to be looked after health-wise. And you know, I don't understand this premise of not being there for people, not looking after people. I really don't. I do generally believe that the Conservatives just don't care. That these particular Conservative government just don't care about any of this. Like, you throw all this at them, they just don't care. Like, literally, the only way you'll make them care is if you literally turn this into a drama series and put it out there for the people and say this is true. And then it will force the government to actually maybe do something. It's really quite sickening. It's really sickening that people are being treated like this. Someone calling 999 from their goddamn hospital bed. Why? A series of coroner warnings filed as part of a prevention of future death reports, which are sent when a coroner thinks action is needed to protect lives, have raised concerns over the issue. In November, a coroner warned the Health Secretary Victoria Atkins that changes to the elderly care must be made, while another said there was an increasing need for doctor specialists in the area. What has Victoria Atkins actually done as Health Secretary, by the way? What has she done? What has she done since she's been Health Secretary? As a matter of fact, let's go further. What did Steve Barclay do when he was Health Secretary? What did Theresa Coffey do when she was Health Secretary? I'll tell you what Jeremy Hunt did when he was Health Secretary. Do you want to know what he did? He cut the NHS. He was ruthless. He was mean. The rest of these lot, previous Health Secretaries, and this person here, they are all useless. Just a lot of rhetoric and talk, and not enough done in any way, shape, or form. Are they even doing any work? A third warning that delays discharge where a patient is well enough to leave the hospital but has not been discharged, where putting the lives of frail elderly people at risk as they lose muscle mass and develop infections. They don't. It just feels like to me that they just don't care. Yeah, we talk about we have do you want to remind yourself that we do have children in England who are starving, who can't feed themselves, and it's only because when they go to school that they actually have food in their belly. They don't have any food at home because their parents can't afford it. Just we've got children who are struggling, surviving, and we've got elderly patients being left to die and rot away. Is this how we're supposed to be treating our country? Is this how we're supposed to be treating our people? Everybody talks about asylum seekers. Have we forgotten who we are? We're supposed to be human beings looking out for each other. And it feels like to me everyone's forgotten that. Dr. John Dean, a clinical vice president of the Royal College of Physicians, described the situation as heartbreaking, adding, cases such as these are unacceptable and sadly symptomatic of a health service stretched to its limits. Dr. Vicky Price, president-elect of the Society of Acute Medicine, says older patients are increasingly receiving care well below the standards and is to expect that staff wish to provide that cannot due to intense pressures. This includes being subject to long waits in waiting rooms and degrading corridor cases, which is regrettable, becoming widespread and increasing the likelihood of adverse outcomes for this patient's group. One nurse warned that she is fighting a losing battle with staff too stretched to carry out personal care, leading to infections. She told The Independent, "It makes you wonder why you come to work, because this has been like this for a very long time. It doesn't get any better." This is the problem. If there's not enough staff, why there's not enough staff? What's being done about it? The thing is that you expect more for less. This is the problem. This stupid premise of more for less is the premise that government expects of people. They expect ordinary people to do more for less. There is only so much more for less you can do until it gets to a point where they can't do any more. And this is exactly what's happening here. They expect the doctors and nurses that are there to literally do everything in no time whatever, expecting to achieve goals and targets that are impossible. That's the problem. They expect it all to be, they expect that. And it's not possible. It's just not possible for them. We have to be realistic about their expectations. The government admitted that accounts for poor care uncovered by the Independent were unacceptable and fall well below the standard of care. We're treated like animals. Thomas Gilly, 96, was treated like an animal during a hospital stay in December and January, his daughter Dr. Alan Giles claims. In a complaint to Mercy and West Lancashire Teaching Hospitals Trust, his doctor alleged that his father was left to expose to all passers-by, ill, semi-naked, distressed, delirious and neglected in care during his 2-month stay. She also said he ended up choking on his vomit because he was so heavily sedated. Mr. Giles was admitted to A&E at Wilston Hospital on Lancashire on the 3rd of December with concerns over his confused state and spent 8 hours in the corridors according to his daughter. The next morning, after he had been moved to the hospital ward for frail elderly people, she returned to see her father distressed and suffering delirium due to a UTI. This, Dr. Giles claims, marks the start of weeks for Mr. Giles being sedated without the family's permission. In a series of shocking claims of poor treatment, Dr. Gill said her father was at one point left with a wound dressing that was sobbing wet and coming off because it was so saturated. Do you know what the other thing as well, guys, is that with these situations, I'm not even halfway through this article, guys. Do you know what's even more depressing is that this is going to cost taxpayers money, and I mean in terms of the cruelty, because the staff are so overstretched. Yeah, we're going to be paying for this. In some heartbreaking pleas during the hospital stay, he said her father told her that some of the staff here are cruel. And I've never felt so hopeless, and I've never cried like I cried yesterday. In her complaint, she wrote, I can only say that I've been in medicine for decades now, and what I saw on that wall was so horrific and abhorrent I could not initially register what was happening. It represents every concern about the NHS I've seen highlighted in previous serious case for news. A trust spokesperson said, where patients don't feel our case has been good enough, we encourage them to come forward and raise those concerns directly with the trust. We have been in ongoing contact with Mr. Giles and his family and responding full to them around the concerns they have raised. Better off at the vet. I'm not going to read every single one just because how many there are. It will take forever for us, guys, but yeah, better off at the vets. 99-year-old Kathleen Holder was taken to Huxtable Burton A&E Derbyshire and was later diagnosed with fractures in her spine, but she was sent home with just 2 paracetamol, according to her daughter Sam Ailes Newstead. That's just not good. Treated like me. In August 2023, 86-year-old Joan Stevens, a former nurse, was admitted to Stoke Maddenville Hospital in Buckinghamshire following a fall. Her daughter Sharon Kidd told The Independent she spent 12 hours in A&E corridor. She was mobile when she went in, but she came out 3 weeks later. She could no longer be mobile because they couldn't get her out of bed, said Miss Kidd. Left in soaked sheets. Last year, former Royal Air Force veteran Rob Gallen, 94, was admitted to Poole Hospital in Dorset. During their time there, Mr. Galing was left in soiled sheets after staff ignored his bells that he needed to go to the toilet, according to his daughter Jane. Eventually, he was given a catheter when it was overflowed to wet his bed. He was left in the mess overnight. What? Oh my God. The Department of Health and Social Care spokesperson says these accounts are unacceptable and fall below well-bestowed standards we expect, and our thoughts are with the affected patients and their families. We are committed to providing quality care for all patients, including the elderly, and have already delivered on our promise to create 5,000 extra permanent hospital beds and 10,000 hospital beds free up to capacity, speed up discharge waiting times. It said that through the NHS long-term workforce plan, which is giving £2.4 billion in funding, there will be more healthcare professionals, including doctors and nurses, working in the NHS. This is just another example of the problems that the NHS is in, and what are the solutions? What are we supposed to do, guys? Like, I really don't understand. Like, I understand the point of doctors and nurses stretched. I understand that. I do. I really, really do. But they said, now they're claiming obviously some of the attitudes might be. Now it's highly possible, guys, and let's just apply a little bit of common sense here, guys. It's highly possible that they may be overworked and a bit heated up, hesitant and whatnot, and maybe they burst out in frustration over what's happening with their jobs. It's entirely possible, and that could potentially be it. Because I generally don't believe people working in the NHS are bad people. I really don't. I mean, it's very. I mean, in my opinion, and you can disagree with me and let me know in the comment section. You know, from my experiences and people that are who I know that have worked in the NHS or have had treatment in the NHS, they've all had good experiences with regards to their doctors and nurses, and in terms of the treatment and the interaction with them. Obviously, at right now, it's run back and forth all the time with these doctors and nurses. But when they have like how is one doctor or one nurse supposed to look after like 20 different people at the same time, sort of thing? Like, it's just not realistic. It's just unrealistic, yeah, for them with barely any bodies to look after to manage this. It's impossible for them. And I really don't want to come across like this is all the NHS's fault, because I really don't believe that, guys. I really don't think it's the NHS's fault. I really do feel that the government allowed this to happen. The government continually underfunded it. The government would not give doctors and nurses the fair pay rise they want. Remember, they won't get round the table with them when it comes to looking for a better better terms and conditions and pay rates for them. A lot of this can be avoided, and a lot of money that, you know, they keep saying there's record investment going into the NHS. Yeah, they say this. There's always record investment going into the NHS, right? What you don't know is that a lot of that money just gets funneled out of the NHS. It goes through the NHS, but it doesn't stay there. It gets funneled out. I've actually seen one or two stories out there where actually funding from that we pay into the NHS actually goes into the private healthcare sector as well. I don't know how true that is, but I have heard those stories as well. So, guys, what do you think? What do you make of this scandal? Elderly patients being treated like animals. Have you got some of your own stories that you want to share about the NHS? Maybe similar. Let me know your thoughts about this and more about the NHS in the comments section down below. If you found this video informative in any way, please hit the like button. We greatly appreciate it. Share this across social media so others are notified of this video, and subscribe because it really does help support the channel. And if you want to go one step further and financially support me in the work that I do here, you can do so by becoming a YouTube member for as little as 99p, or you can even join me on Rumble or Patreon for exclusive content there as well. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and I hope to catch you all very, very soon.